my name is Gemma Lee, and welcome back to my channel. Today, we are going to be continuing with Remnants of Filth by Meatbun, also known as YUWU. Did I say that correctly? I don't know. I hope you guys had a lovely day so far. I had a decent day. Actually, work went pretty great. We actually got done pretty early. I did think we were gonna get done pretty, way earlier since we were going through the list pretty quickly. But either way, I got done before 3 today. And I'm glad I can actually come home and do this now, earlier. Anyway, I hope you guys are excited to continue the story. I know I am, and I actually wonder what will happen today. Is there anything else I should say? I don't know. I'm probably overthinking it. But anyway, we did end at chapter 3 on page 50. Okay. I'm just gathering my thoughts, trying to think of everything that I know so far that has happened. Also, I would really like to know your guys' thoughts on what just happened the last time I read. Oh. You think he's gonna show up though in this chapter? Chapter 4? Umong? I kinda hope so. I kinda wanna yeah, I know I said this a lot last time I read, but I just really wanna see his thoughts, his feelings, and his character, basically. Anyway, I'm gonna grab my book, and we are starting at page 51, chapter 4, Moshe puts on an act. The next day, the army returned. The whole city bustled with activity as residents of all ages poured out onto the streets as far as the eye could see. Northern Frontier Army, welcome back! As the procession entered the city, a strange atmosphere spilled forth from both sides of the road. It was as if water had been poured into a pot of sizzling oil and swiftly capped with a wooden lid to seal all that crackling excitement beneath it. People lowered their heads respectfully, but they still snuck glances out at the corner of their eyes to peek at the elite army riding past. Moshe wore an Imperial Army uniform, his steel-toed military boots in their stirrups. Other than his belt and vambraces, which glinted cold silver, he was all in black. Ah, Shishun! I said that completely wrong. Ah, Shijun is so handsome I can't stand it. I'm dying. I think he just looked at me. Ha, stop kidding yourself. How would he ever have eyes for anyone but Princess Mengshi? I don't think he has the eyes for Princess Mengshi, but okay. But he hasn't married the princess yet. He turns 30 this year. And he doesn't have a wife or a betrothed, or even any concubines. Can't I at least fantasize seriously? As for the officers and soldiers, their expressions were much more cheerful than Moshe's, as they waved happily at the civilians. lining the streets. Yu Chengqing even delightedly accepted flowers from maidens to put in his hair. Only after Moshi glanced at him in warning did he sulkily resign himself to holding and sniffing the flowers. All in all, looking quite pitiful. Even though I don't like Yu Chengqing, why can't he have them put the flower in his ear? No, hair, sorry. Don't really see a problem with that. It was a long road from the city gates, and they wouldn't reach the imperial palace for a while yet. Yu Chengqing didn't behave for very long at all before he started twirling his flowers again. He grinned flirtatiously at the onlookers and called out to them as the procession advanced. "Hey ladies, aren't you lovely? This humble one is seeking concubines, food and lodging included." "Yu Chengqing," Moshi snapped. Yu Chengqing covered his mouth. The sunlight, the northern frontier army's glinting weapons and flashing armor were a magnificent sight as they rode through the capital. They were still Gumong's old soldiers, but they could no longer behave as they once had. In the old days, when Gumong returned victorious, he had waved and teased from his horse at their head, while the happy, relaxed soldiers behind him had laughed as they accepted wines and desserts from the civilians. But Xiejun was their commander now. This man didn't even smile, so no one else dared to let loose. The slow march from the city gates ended up taking more than an hour. Upon their arrival, the army was greeted with the long and tedious merit ceremony, in which they had to kneel and kowtow and give thanks. It was all terribly irritating. Even when Moshi finally made it to the evening feast, he had neither peace nor quiet. As Yu Chengqing would have said, he found himself obligated to deal with those young mistresses in a manner chaste yet aloof, reserved yet courteous. Of course, he would say that. Of course. On that note, the first time Yu Chengqing joked about Moshi's chastity, Xiejun had made him transcribe maidenly virtues 100 times as punishment. Without speaking a word aloud, Xiejun had clearly said, "Yu Chengqing, is the problem that you don't know the word chastity? Come here. I'll let you learn to your heart's content." It's just kind of funny. But no matter how many times Yu Chengqing sniffled through the words maidenly virtues are boundless, womanly grievances are endless, the joke that Xiejun was chaste yet aloof, reserved yet courteous, still secretly spread throughout the entire army. Everyone else thought so too. Xiejun was already 30 years of age, but he still refused to marry, all to wait for Princess Mengxie. I really don't think he's waiting for Princess Mengxie. I don't think marriage is on his mind, at all. That much was obvious from the situation at the feast. A crowd of little ladies from noble houses was chattering around Moshi, but he wouldn't even look at them. "Xiejun, it's been a long time. Xiejun, you seem to have lost weight. Xiejun, what do you think of this pendant I'm wearing today?" Can't take a clue. In the group of high-born young ladies, the most provocative was Princess Yangping, the younger sister of Princess Mengxie. She had a gorgeous figure despite having only recently coming of age, and she gazed around with eyes that overflowed with amorous intent. She walked toward Moshi with a smile, her lips as tender as a juicy berry. When Yu Ching spied this from afar, he didn't bother to swallow his dessert before grabbing a friend he hadn't seen in a while. Hey, hey! I kind of lost my place. I'm trying to find. What do you want? I kind of forgot I changed the page, so I was just being an idiot. What do you want? Come, look over there, Yu Chengqing said excitedly. Isn't that the Princess Yanping and Xiejun? What interesting about that? Princess Yanping doesn't stand a chance. No. I want you to see the legendary, chaste yet aloof, reserved yet courteous Xiejun with your own eyes. Aren't you tired of copying maidenly virtues? Ren asked. Yu Chengqing was the sort of person who never learned his lesson. Really? That's pretty obvious. I lost my place. Grinning, he dragged his friend closer to eavesdrop on the general and the princess. Yu Chengqing, oh wait, no, I already read that. Brother-in-law, still smiling, Princess Yanping came to stop in front of Moshi. Her tone was flirtatious from the instant she opened her mouth. Moshi lowered his lashes, pausing at this form of address, and then chastely turned to leave. Oop. Yanping hastily stopped him. Brother-in-law, you've been standing here expressionless this whole time. Ignoring all the girls. Are you cross that my sister isn't here? He paused before replying, aloof. Princess, you're mistaken. I am not yet wet. Just saying it for fun. Controlling his temper, Moshi was reserved in his response. This is no laughing matter. Right, alright, don't get mad. My sister's health hasn't been especially good these past few years. She caught a cold last night, otherwise she definitely would have come to see you. Moshi knew Princess Mengshi's poor health was inextricably linked to himself, so he courteously asked, How is she? Ha! Yu Chengqing cackled. See, I told you so. Ching, friend, felt that he was laughing too loudly. No matter how noisy the banquet was, there was still a chance he would attract Xiejun's attention, and even if Yu Chengqing didn't mind copying those trite passages on womanly conduct, his friend wouldn't be able to take the hit to his pride. He clapped a hand over Yu Chengqing's mouth and dragged him away. Notwithstanding their departure, Princess Yanping and Moshi's conversation continued. Yanping kept smiling. For spending 2 years alone at the frontier, still think of sister. Don't worry, you only had a headache and a same issue, as you know well. You'll be fine with some rest. Moshi said nothing. Let's be honest. Given my sister's health, how could she handle Xiejun if she didn't recover first? As Yanping spoke, her admiration gaze swept courteously over Moshi's long legs, then lingered on the high bridge of his nose. She sighed. My sister doesn't get better. I'll never be able to marry. Are you really going to spend your whole life saving yourself for her? That's her Ooh, nope. Also, sorry, I fixed the issue. Let's get started and pretend that never happened. Wouldn't that be an awful shame? Princess pressed close to Moshi, redolent with powdery sweetness, her dark hair decked in jewels, and a rouge-colored penny drawn between her brows. A smile, she deliberately leaned forward, pale blossom heaping. Oh my god, girl, like, step back, Jesus. Give him some room. Obviously, he's not interested. Also, she does not care about her sister, how she would feel about this, does she? Because it seems like everyone's under the impression that these two like each other. That her sister and Moshi like each other. And she is not even taking that into account and starting to hit on him. This girl's selfish and a terrible sister. Jesus. I have siblings, and I wouldn't do that if I knew, or at least thought they liked someone like that. God. Also, she is way too forward. Like, what the heck? Not that that's a bad thing, but in this case, yes. Yes, it's a bad thing, I think. Why don't you give me a try? I'm all grown up now. She might think that sounds great, but I don't know, that's kind of giving me vibes with the I'm all grown up now. So why don't you give me a try? I don't like that. I'm no less than her. Yanping tried to wrap her soft arms around his waist. Oh, move away. It's just spending the night together. Don't take it too seriously. She giggled, the pale pink tip of her tongue flipped over. Ooh. Okay, her lips, ever so briefly. Like it. When it said, the pale pink tip of her tongue flicked over, I thought it was gonna go into a really weirder route for this girl, where she was going to lick Moshi. I am so glad that was not the case. That was the end of it, thank God. Don't take it too seriously. The sentence topped the list of things Moshi hated more than anything. Princess Yanping had not only failed to attract him, she jabbed him exactly where he hurt most. Also, don't take it too seriously. That quote. Did Gumong say something like that to him? I can't remember, but I have a feeling he did probably say something like that during the time when Moshi was trying to sacrifice himself, kind of, earlier. Anyway, Moshi glanced at her, pausing, then said coolly, "Move aside." Hey, you! But Moshi had already walked away from the frown. Amid the fluttering tassels of Feo Terran, Moshi grabbed another Lioli glass from a servant. Its contents glimmered with an amber hue. His leather-clad legs didn't relax until he strode to the terrace's edge, where he leaned against the red lacquer, railing to watch the city lights. Free of the maddening hall, he caught his breath and took a sip of the berry wine in the cup, the jet of his throat bobbing. Moshi had been subject to many years of the lady's favor, but he still didn't like it. Nor was he used to it. In the past, few people had admired Moshi. When he walked the streets, hardly anyone had snuck a glance at him. Back then, he had been terribly bad-tempered. How bad, exactly? In comparison, the current Shiejun was an absolute sweetheart. Oh, I kind of figured, considering all the things he went to with the betrayal and all, that he'd be a lot worse now compared to back then. But no, I guess I was wrong. Well, that's to the ladies, though, so maybe that's a different story with, like, others. Sorry about that. Later, there had been a massive upheaval within his family, and everyone had thought this young master of the Mo clan was doomed. The other noble cultivators ignored him, and the cultivators of common birth didn't dare approach him. Only Gumong, the lunatic who didn't fear death, was willing to be his comrade. He was the only one who chose to keep that floundering young master company and offer him comfort. Don't worry. You're no longer a noble young man. You'll always be you. There's an ember in your heart, and sooner or later, it will glow. I can see, and others will too. In the end, Moshi survived the crisis and escaped the Mo clan's shadow. He fought at every frontier, achieving more military merits than even his ancestors. No longer did anyone think of him as the only son of the Mo clan. They only treated him as the venerated Shiejun. More maidens began to think highly of him. After Gumong defected, the maidens changed their type. They all flocked to admire Moshi instead, and even some sighed. Ah, it's good for men to be a little stuffy. They're more honest that way. At least they won't let us down like Gumong. Even though Shiejun has a bad temper, he tells it like it is. If there's anything he wants to rant about, he'll say it outright. He won't ever put on an act. Well, considering the title, I think he does. A brothel girl once went so far as to smack a table and heroically proclaim, with a hand on her hip, Shiejun is the most innocent man I've ever seen. Uh-huh. Swear on my honor, if Shiejun came to bed with me, I'd pay him before I'd take his money. As it turned out, Shiejun really did come the next day, not to bed her, but to shut down the brothel with a murderous look on his face. Seducing Shenjun, how shameless. Seducing Shenjun, or maybe it's just Shenjun, has a footnote. A polite term of address for a cultivator. Your punishment is to go become women of good families. I don't necessarily think that's a punishment, but that works too for them. After Moshi finished shutting down the brothel and berating them ferociously, he left in a rage. ... Also, behind a crowd of brothel girls wailing that they'd never again sell their bodies because Shiejun had persuaded them to leave the trade, tearfully attesting to the incomparable goodness of Shiejun's character. It made no sense. People loved to take a person who seemed decent and good and enshrine them in their hearts, pinning all their beautiful fantasies on the person's shoulder just to bring a little light to themselves. But Moshi had no wish to be concentrated as their boring holy idol. He wasn't as perfect as those girls believed. Also, if you read Heaven's Official Blessing, This is kind of that paragraph kind of reminds me of that because I mean, obviously they wanted to ascend and become gods, but then they get on on this really high pedestal. And if they do one wrong thing, they are basically trash. They are treated horribly and looked down upon, even if it was just a small mistake, even if it wasn't something that it wasn't their fault. Sorry, it was reminding me of that. Anyway, there were miserably wretched things in his past, things he couldn't speak of to anyone, but no one understood. So what Gumong had said was right, but it was also wrong. Moshi did indeed throw off the Mo clan's shadow to shine on his own merit in front of everyone's eyes, but he knew very well that this glory belonged solely to the flawless Xiejun of their imaginations. It had nothing to do with the trapped and lonely youth from long ago. From beginning to end, only Gumong had ever walked toward that downtrodden young master, toward the youth with an uncertain future. Only he had ever been sincerely happy to be reunited with his little Shidi from the academy, reaching out to him in delight with a little canine peeking from that brilliant smile. Before the warmth of a bonfire, he'd smiled and said, "It's been a long time, Moshi. Can I sit with you? It's been a long time. Can I sit with you?" Suddenly someone behind Moshi asked a very similar question. Moshi's fingertips shook, the wine in his lioli cup almost spilling. He turned his head as if in a dream and saw, beneath the moonlight blossoms of the foxglove trees, a familiar silhouette calmly watching him on Fayao. Any guesses who that is? I doubt it's Gumong, but very coincidental. Okay, that was the end of chapter 4. We are going to be starting on chapter 5 at page 59, which is called What About Gumong? Is he finally gonna show up? We'll see. But it wasn't Gumong, of course. I mean, I knew it wasn't. Of course it wouldn't be Gumong. Moshi mocked himself as he came to his senses. What was he thinking? Speaker was a man with gentle features. He sat in a wooden wheelchair, a white coat draped over his shoulders, and a blanket with the color of lotus roots tucked over his paralyzed legs. Moshi was rather taken aback. Qingshu elder young Yeshu. He was Yu Chengqing's old... God, I'm already messing up on my pronunciations. Jiang Yeshu was different from Yu Chengqing, the carefree and silly kid. He had lived a hard life and a Spartan... Sorry, it was actually supposed to be hard and Spartan life. His mother had passed away when he was young, and later, because he insisted on marrying the daughter of a criminal, he had been kicked out of the YUWU clan. At the time, he and his maiden hadn't had much money, so their wedding was very simple. Due to pressure from the YUWU clan, only a few people had persevered to attend, two of whom were Moshi and Gumong. Moshi had gifted them a small courtyard. Gumong stared, tongue-tied, at the land deed and told Jiang Yeshu, "Bro." Still so weird to see her bro. That's... Anyway, that's not important. "Bro, I'm totally broke. There's no way I can afford to get you one of those." Everyone laughed, and amid the cheer, Gumong puffed out his cheeks and played the song of courtship on his sona. But the good times didn't last. Young Yeshu and his wife both joined the military. The battlefield was pitiless, taking first his wife and then his legs. Moshi didn't know how this man had endured. Fortunately, Jiang Yeshu was tougher than he looked. In the end, he pulled himself together and secured a position as an elder at the Cultivation Academy, instructing students in the practice of artificing. But this had angered his father, as the Yu clan was the most powerful noble family of the artificers in Changhua. Yu Shen, Yu Junqian? Junqian? I don't know. He immediately ordered the Cultivation Academy to oust Jiang Yeshu from his position. This unfilial son was disowned and no longer shares our surname. How dare he make a living off the Yu clan's work? Is it really, him making a living off of them? The headmaster couldn't convince Yu Yunshan otherwise and had no choice but to apologetically let Jiang Yeshu go. Oh, come on. That seems great. Not the... I'm talking about Jiang Yeshu. God, I feel bad for this guy. After watching this take place, Moshi had decided to find Jiang Yeshu. Oh. Sorry, I had a call. I'll be back. I'm gonna go figure out what that was all about. Welcome back. I hope you guys are excited to continue the book, because I am, and wanting to know what the heck is going on. Well, I mean, I kind of got a good idea what's happening to Gumong, but like, uh, I don't even know how to piece my thoughts together. Anyway, I hope you guys were able to basically walk around and get a drink and, you know, get a snack if you needed to. Just have time in between. And let's get started, okay? Oh, that's the wrong book. Okay, there we go. That's the right book. Anyway, we are on page 71 of chapter 6 called Reunion. Moshi's fury and disgust blazed to life once more. His face was yet impassive, but his dark eyes hid in an inferno of rage. Oof. He felt hatred, but he didn't know whom he was hating. Of course he knew he shouldn't hate the people who came to bed Gumong. They were only paying for a night of fun. He shouldn't hate Wang Shujun either. He was only debasing a guilty subject as ordered. So he could only hate Gumong. Interesting, I mean, I get it. Like, I don't know. I know this is a book and like whatever. I don't agree with someone getting raped because of their crimes. But yeah. Anyway, Moshi stared at the scarlet text on the plaque. The redness swiftly infecting his eyes like an incurable disease. How familiar this was, like the return of a nightmare. Many years ago, Moshi had returned upon the completion of a mission to hear that, after the new emperor had stripped him of his rank, Gumong couldn't pull himself together. Moshi was told that Gumong was wasting away, drowning his woes in brothels, but he didn't believe it. Yet when Moshi stood panting like a fool in the dim light, when he strode in amid the voices of the women and pushed aside from the heavy sandalwood door, he saw that familiar— oh my god, my words. He saw that familiar silhouette in the depths of their room. The room, not their room. Only a few months has passed. Gumong's face hadn't changed, but he no longer seemed like the same person. Oh, I doubt he's definitely the same person by now, too, in the present time. Gumong was lying in the bed, surrounded by glinting opulence. Incense burned slowly inside the golden beast-shaped censers, and pale wisps of smoke rose in spirals, the fumes making everything misty and unclear. When Gumong heard the door, he opened hazy black eyes to glance at Moshi, as though he saw none of the anger and sadness on his old friend's face. He smiled. Something in Moshi's heart seemed to shatter at the sight of that careless smile. It's just sleeping— oh wait. Nope, I skipped a line. Gumong was right, he thought. Pleasure went only skin deep. Depends on the person and how they think. It's just sleeping together. You can do that with anyone. Why take it so seriously? Gumong had said to him. Gumong had never been shy about such things. Back in the day, He had been prone to cup Moshi's uneasy face as he lay beneath him, smiling as he panted. I'm still not used to them slowly bringing it in, but it is Meatbun. She did this in Urha, so I should kind of expect, you know, scenes like this to slip through in like this. Chidi, don't worry. You don't need to be so gentle. Your Gumangege is tough. You won't break me. During the years of their wild entanglement, Gumang had been fucked to the point of tears more than once, to the point where he mindlessly murmured Moshi's name and tearily said, I love you. But he might not have meant it. That was why Gumang could smile as he lay in the brothel, with not a single care for the past. That was why... Oh wait, no, I was about to repeat. It was Moshi's own fault for being stupid. Like a silly kid, he'd actually believed the words said between the sheets were true. It's not like anything important. After the new emperor discarded him, Gumang refused to pull himself together. Perhaps the emperor's actions and the deaths of his soldiers had shattered his soul, so he wanted to languish in mud for the rest of his life, and smoke and wine and women. Oh wait, hold on. It's been a bit. Like, my memory might be... Well, granted, it's only been like 10 minutes, but were they exclusive? Were they like together when this happened? Because if he only... When he left, this was like right after getting... I think after the emperor discarded him, so does that mean Gumang cheated on Moshi? Or... I don't know. I gotta keep reading. I'm a little confused. Maybe I got my timelines mixed up. I don't know. Anyway. He would drown himself in whatever provided the most vivid illusion, as long as, in those illusions, he was still that young General Gu who still had his brothers and his passions. At this moment in Danmei Pavilion, indistinct sounds of conversation could be heard from inside the room in front of Moshi. Feeling faint, he walked to the window at the end of the hall and gasped for air outside. His slender fingers tightened on the window frame so hard they left a crack in the wooden lattice. Faithless bitch. Now, I'm not sure about the other thing, like I said, if he slept around while they were together and, you know. And I know this is probably just Moshi not being able to handle this or the betrayal and turning his hate only on Gumang. Because obviously he thinks Gumang betrayed him and all. But at this point, I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm saying random things and it doesn't make sense. My mind's a little, I'm sorry. The rims of Moshi's eyes were scarlet as he stared out into the night. These blistering harsh words had come into his mind, unbidden. This was the first time he had ever thought to use such vicious language to describe someone. Gumang, that bitch. Moshi had once believed he understood Gumang well, that he knew Gumang better than anyone else. He had been so stupid, holding Gumang in his heart, treating him as the most intimate of friends. So my mic is like there. Okay, that's better. Maybe. Okay, this might be better. Anyway, he had been so ignorant, Gumong had been clear in his teachings. Sleeping together didn't mean anything. And sleeping together multiple times only meant they liked each other's bodies. But Moshi still hadn't been able to stop himself from treating Gumong like a beloved, never to be betrayed. He was old-fashioned and stubborn when it came to this. No one could change his obstinate temperament. That was why he once believed so firmly in Gumong, even when Gumong became the target of 1,000 grievances. Mushi had stood in the Great Hall of Chonghua's imperial palace and told everyone, I, Moshi, can swear on my life that Gumong would never turn traitor. Well, but Gumong lied to him. Gumong betrayed him. Betrayed Moshi's trust again and again. Betrayed his hope day after day. In the end, Gumong personally stabbed Moshi in the chest and told him that everything had gone far past the point of return. Moshi had once believed that things couldn't get any worse. He never could have imagined that even now, Gumong could still crush his already fractured heart. Before he came to Danmei Pavilion, Moshi had nursed a little bit of hope in his chest. He had hoped Gumong was still the same unyielding man whose conscience would never let him bow to the powerful. If that were the case, Moshi's heart, which Gumong had covered in scars, might have yet felt some measure of relief. Oh. Sorry. Rereading. To, soak in what that meant. Anyway. But Gumong wouldn't even grant him that slight bit of ease. Moshi felt like the bones in his flesh were shaking, trembling from hatred. Gumong had actually spent these years in Danmei Pavilion, where the slaves were treated worse than livestock. Moshi didn't know whether he should feel satisfaction at a traitor's punishment as Chiejun or anguish over an old friend's ruination as Moshi. The door opened with a thump. Moshi tensed instantly, like a falcon sighting prey. Without turning, he was certain the sound had come from Gumong's direction. A man was leaving Gumong's room, cursing up a storm. He spat phlegm. I don't know how to say this word. It's spelled Phlegm. I don't know. Onto the ground, continuing to swear as he stomped down the stairs. The sharp scent of wine filled the hallway. The departing guest was obviously a drunken alcoholic. Moshi stood in place. Gumong's room is open now. I'm gonna. Is he actually gonna go in there? I can't think of what he will do. I mean, honestly. I mean, I don't think he'll try to, sleep with him like that other guy, obviously. But, or maybe I could be wrong. I don't know. But I feel like it's not that. Maybe he won't even go in the room. And he'll just, peek in there. Or maybe he'll just completely, leave. Too scared to actually look. I don't know. What do you think? Guess we'll find out. Only after a long while, when the scent of wine had dissipated, did he lift his head and close his eyes. When he slowly opened them again, he was filled with a strange calm. Oh. Stepping silently, he made his way back to Gumong's door. He paused, then lifted one black leather military boot and pushed open the carved lacquered door that someone else had closed moments ago. Oh, I guess he's actually going in. Ooh. The room was dark, lit by a single oil lamp, and was filled with the nauseating scent of alcohol. Moshi walked in with his jaw clenched and glanced around, only to find the room empty. I doubt it's like actually completely empty, but I'm kind of on edge for what's gonna happen. Halfway through his second survey of the room, he heard splashing from behind a screen. Moshi's blood surged fretfully once again. Gumong was bathing. This realization felt like being hit with a rod, the strike making him dizzy. He had suppressed so many emotions: betrayal, disappointment, loathing, hatred, to the point of madness, until his heart was bleeding. The blood rushed up against the current to dye his eyes. Biting his lip, he forced himself to turn away. His nails had sunk deep into his palm before he managed barely to restrain that overflowing fury. He hadn't realized he would be so angry even now, that his rage had only grown with the passage of time. Moshi sat down at the little round table, closing his eyes to avoid losing control. As he waited for Gumong to emerge, he thought, when Gumong saw him, what expression would Gumong have? When he saw Gumong, what would he say? Moshi gritted his teeth and sat in silence for a long time. He didn't even notice when the sound of water stopped. He was too busy hating Gumong's lack of dignity. I'm sorry I keep pausing, but it's like putting me on edge that, like, at least it feels like it, that they might actually see each other, that he might actually show up in the book now, not like past tense, but present tense. And I don't know how this is gonna go. Or the author might just, be like, rise that, like, suspension of them maybe seeing each other now, and then be like, nope. And Moshi just straight up leaves. I don't know. Taking a deep breath, calm myself. Only when the room was illuminated by a second lamp did Moshi come to his senses. Turning, he saw a young man, clad in only a white robe, standing by the lamp stand, quietly looking at him. Moshi didn't know how long he had been standing there. I guess the author won't do that. Okay. The face was the same as the one in his memories, it merely a little thinner. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The young man stood without making a sound. A magical shackle visible where his robes hung loose at the collar. He was barefoot, his inky black hair unbound and draping obediently down over one shoulder. It set off the thinness and paleness of his face, making his eyes seem extraordinarily bright. His hair was still wet from his bath, and water streamed down his nape to his collarbones, to his chest, disappearing into the shadows beneath his robe and leaving faint smudges of wetness. Gumong. Gumong. In the terrifying stillness, the sound of pleasures from the next room over were all the more piercing. The rims of Moshi's eyes were red, and his clenched knuckles were shaking. He stared at the man before him. He swallowed, wanting to say something, but rendered mute. At last, they had met again. Finally, they were reunited. Moshi had thought of so many questions, but he couldn't seem to remember a single one. All that flashed in his blurry sight was that scene many years ago on the battleship. The blue and gold ribbon was askew on Gumong's forehead as he lifted Moshi's face with that bloody dagger, expression unreadable as he said, "I really will kill you." Back then, Moshi had thought that might be the end to their story, yet now their paths had crossed again. And their paths crossing again is maybe gave me a feel on the edge of my seat right now. Gumong was standing in front of Moshi, his expression serene as he regarded him silently. To be honest, it was laughable. There was such hatred between them, but in this moment, Moshi's first reaction was distress. He had not seen Gumong come in, and therefore had missed the look in Gumong's eyes when he first caught sight of Moshi. Now, Gumong seemed serene and undisturbed, as if he were looking at any guest who had entered his room in the past 2 years. He was devoid of any emotion Moshi recognized. Somehow, it was a peaceful reunion. The two of them gazed at each other for a while, then Gumong walked over and sat down next to Moshi. Perhaps because Moshi had never expected Gumong to move so calmly, he unconsciously shifted back, although his face remained impassive. "What?" Gumong retrieved a little bamboo scroll from the table and handed it to him without a word. Moshi didn't know what Gumong meant by this, but he took the scroll and opened it under the lamp. Sorry. Getting too riled up with this. Sorry, finding my place. Moshi didn't know what Gumong meant by this, but he took the scroll and opened it under the faint lamplight. When he skimmed through it, his blood boiled, then ran cold. How bad is it? In the end, he closed his eyes and slammed the scroll on the table. The piece shattered. Gumong. Moshi stared at him, still restraining himself, but the lava in his eyes surged as his knuckles cracked. "Have you lost your fucking mind?" Gumong said, "You need to choose." His voice was smooth as satin, slightly husky and very deep. Again, he picked up the scroll and passed it to Moshi. "Choose something." "I'm confused, but I'm sure it'll explain it. I'm sure." "What do you think I came here to do?" Gumong's vocabulary seemed to have been reduced to only one word: choose. Moshi was angry enough to ascend, his chest heaving, his bright black eyes ferocious. The red within their depths grew deeper and deeper. Fury, disappointment, hatred, and sorrow all reflected in the bloody crimson of his eyes. He held that little bamboo scroll for a long time before he flung it back onto the table. The scroll fell open. Laomei Pavilion's prices were meticulously displayed within, from the conversations and companionable drinking to venting rage, abuse, and Moshi looked away. Oh? Wait. I mean, I kind of figured what Gumong was showing Moshi was something about him choosing what they would do for what he wanted to pay for. But they literally put abusive stuff to put in there to pay for. I mean, I wasn't under no impression that no abuse was happening under this, but wow. If you don't choose, then what should I do? Moshi was about to lose his mind, but he still endured. In truth, his temper was horribly explosive, but he had become a master at suppressing it. What do you mean? He ground out. Gumong looked at him placidly, his eyes like the still waters of an ancient well. Aren't you here to bed wars? Aren't you here to bed whores? Moshi's expression froze on his face. He couldn't believe someone had actually said these words to him. He felt a twisting in his guts. Gumong, you... Everyone comes here to do these things, Gumong said. You haven't. Why come? He pulled the scroll closer for the third time, picking it up and unfolding it for Moshi. Choose or leave. That's the end of chapter 6 on page 78. Oh god. Is he actually gonna choose something? I don't feel like he'd leave that easily. I really don't. Oh, I'm a little... What do you think he'll choose? I mean, I wish I actually knew, like, all the options to actually be like, maybe this one. But no, I don't. Anyway, to continue, chapter 7 is on page 79, called Losing Control. What a great title page name. Sounds so lovely, right? If someone had gone back in time and told Moshi 3 days ago, not 3 years. Shiejun, I'll let you in on a secret. 3 days from now, you're going to bed a whore. Oh. Well, I think we got his choice. Okay. Shiejun would have, without a doubt, broken all their teeth and shattered their face. But now, he didn't seem to have any other choice. In the end, he rapped his knuckles on the line that said conversation. As he chose his expression with dark features filled with a repressed shadow, Moshi had made his choice. Conversation. Is he gonna... Do they have multiple options? Is he gonna choose both then? Gumong held his hand out to him. What do you want? Give me money. You... Moshi was enraged, his eyes red, so much so that he couldn't even articulate his anger. Gumong didn't make a sound. He only spread his fingers and waited. He was speaking very little now, not talking unless he had to. But the General Gu in Shiejun's memories spoke often. Hold on one second. Hey! What are you doing? Why are you trying to go in my dresser? You want out? Sorry about that. little cat was trying to put her head in my dresser for some reason. My dresser drawer was a little open. I need to shut that later. Anyway. Gotta find my place because I completely lost it. When he was facing the soldiers on the drill grounds beneath the blazing sun, he always strode about, proud and powerful, pacing back and forth and shouting at them as his skin glistened with sweat, like crystal droplets on a panther's fur. He always grinned brilliantly, his black eyes bright and shining, a little canine peeking out. I don't know why I keep mixing my words with others. Moshi gave Gumong the most valuable unit of currency in Changhua, a golden cowrie. Gumong didn't thank him. He stood and walked to a shelf, took down a little jar and carefully put the cowrie shell inside. Then he placed the jar back on the shelf. Moshi watched with cold eyes, his heart filled with complicated emotions. Wrath, hatred, resentment, blame, all of it. Looking at Gumong's silhouette, he asked in a frigid voice, "How much money have you saved in that jar of yours? How many people did you let curse at you, degrade you, trample over you? How many people did you sleep with?" Gumong said nothing. He put the jar back and returned to sit in front of Moshi. Under the hazy light, Gumong's face was difficult to see clearly. Moshi couldn't detect any minute expressions on that face, nothing he hadn't already caught. Gumong was too calm, so calm it was unnatural. Had 2 years of disgrace already ground away the last of his pride? But Moshi hadn't yet made him pay. Hadn't even heard him admit his wrongs. How could Gumong have cast his body aside so easily, leaving Moshi nothing but an empty shell? I'll feel like we'll learn that later in the series why. Gave me a gold cowrie. I don't need change. I can't afford change, Gumong said honestly. With that, he opened the bamboo scroll and again gave it to Moshi. So you can choose some more. You can pick anything from here. Moshi stared at him, speechless. He watched Gumong's face, but saw not the slightest hint of humiliated pain. There was only the tranquility with which he asked Moshi to choose more service, as if doing so was nothing out of the ordinary. I mean, wasn't he there for a couple years? 2 to 3 years? I'm sure he's kind of used to this at some point anyway. He's probably not that fazed. I mean, I figure he'd act a little weird considering it's Moshi, but probably not. Moshi turned his head, his jaw clenched so tight it was on the verge of cracking. How strange. Couldn't he have expected this? First, it had been bedding prostitutes. Later, it had been treason. As Gumong crossed Moshi's lines with impunity again and again, Gumong had already told him, "Don't take sleeping together too seriously," a long time ago. Now, he was selling his body in order to stay alive. He had just gone from sleeping with others to being slept with. What was there to be surprised about? I don't want to choose. Moshi grew more and more irritated. The furor in his chest. The furor in his chest, about to break free. He couldn't endure a second longer. He suddenly got up, his expression bitter as frost. "I'm leaving." It seemed Gumong had never experienced a situation like this. A degree of helplessness finally arose in his eyes. He wanted to say something, but he didn't know what to say. Moshi had already turned away when Gumong pulled on his sleeves to stop him. Moshi was at his absolute limit. His anger flickered dangerously, ready to burst into flames at any moment. What the hell do you want? Well, I'm glad he stopped him, because I don't want that, like, interaction with each other to stop. Because I want to know more. I want to... I don't know clearly what I want, but... I don't think you can just leave that easily, but I'm just gonna keep reading. Again, Gumong couldn't answer. He turned back to the shelf, picking up the money jar once more. He took out the golden cowrie and quietly returned it to Moshi's hands. Then I'll give this back to you. Moshi stared at him. Goodbye. There were a few heartbeats of dead silence. With a sudden crash, Moshi grabbed that bamboo scroll. Teeth grinding together, he shoved it before Gumong's eyes. How did it feel to spend these past 2 years here, doing such depraved and unspeakable things? Were you ever satisfied? You can stand the kind of life where someone slaps you and tosses you some money for your troubles? The lava had finally broken free of its confines, those crazed emotions erupting from him all at once. Moshi's pupils flashed scarlet as he panted, but his eyes were filled with tears. Think you'd offer yourself like this? Are you still the same Gumong? Look at yourself now. I can't believe I used to be friends with someone like you. Fought people for you. Even treated you as my... He couldn't continue. He looked like he had been poisoned by wrath. So angry his lips were quivering. The lamps lit by spiritual energy flickered with the surge of his emotions. They blazed bright and then dim, silhouetting the two as they stood staring at each other. Yeah. Moshi grabbed Gumong by the lapels. Gumong had nowhere to hide. All he could do was let his clothes fall into farther disarray. They were almost nose to nose, their eyes practically touching. Moshi's chest heaved violently. He stared at Gumong's face for a beat. Oh, I said that wrong. It didn't even have face in there. My brain's just adding words, I guess. He stared at Gumong for a beat. In this way, before his gaze fell across Gumong's bare shoulder. It was covered in black and blue welts. His temper's gonna rise. Moshi's chest heaved violently. Oh wait, no. Moshi's head rang as if a fuse had blown out. The scarlet rage in his eyes was joined by an emotion he couldn't clearly describe. The emotion made him lash out and seize Gumong by the jaw, shoving him against the shelf. His other hand slammed into the wall next to Gumong's face, and he pinned him beneath his bulk. Not saying he will, I don't know if he will, but I'm a little... if, like, he'll actually hurt Gumong. But, a little scared for him. The lamps that had struggled so valiantly finally lost against the spiritual energy exploding from Moshi and abruptly went out. In the darkness, Moshi stared at Gumong's face from inches away. Those rough, calloused fingers dug pitilessly into Gumong's cheeks and lips. Even his voice was filled with hate. Though it remained low and hoarse, so furious was Moshi that he didn't notice the strange color of Gumong's irises, nor the flicker of Gumong's shock. To live, to earn a little money, you would do anything, right? It was probably not as soft as I was sounding, but, like... Moshi's tight hold seemed to bring Gumong more discomfort than he could bear. His cheeks gradually flushed as he finally reacted and started to struggle in Moshi's grip. But Moshi had lost his last hold of rationality. He couldn't see Gumong's pain. They were surrounded by so much darkness, a darkness like death. The room on either side overflowed with the moaning of women and the panting of men, constantly reminding Moshi of where they are, what Gumong did here, what the two of them could be doing. His mind went from that to that. Well, they are in a brothel. Well, there are a lot of people having sex around them and moaning and all. Moshi was a little startled by the impulse that flashed through his mind, his scalp prickling. You know what? Same. The woman next door seemed to reach her climax. Her gasps came quicker and sharper, the thumping of flesh so clear in the darkness that it could have been right by his ear. Gumong's stifled struggles beneath Moshi didn't let up in the slightest. They looked to him like shameless attempts at seduction. Interesting mind, for sure. Moshi's eyes slowly darkened, molten iron bubbling in their depths, terrifying scalding from rage or from something else. Let go. Moshi didn't let go. He simply scoffed, a sound devoid of satisfaction, filled with extreme disappointment and hateful jealousy. When he spoke, it was with bitter hostility, and perhaps some entirely different emotion. His voice searing with sparks, so rough, even he found it ridiculous. He bent down to hiss through his gritted teeth, right into Gumong's ear. What do you want me to choose? You want me to take you to bed to fuck you? He was answered by silence. Haven't I fucked you enough? He'd spoken too impulsively. The sound of the words shocked even his own ears. Moshi almost never said anything like this. He was the sort of person who frowned as soon as Yu Chengqing told bawdy stories, but here, now, he had been driven to the brink and the words bursting thoughtlessly from his mouth. They were savage, menacing, cruel. They had lain dormant. They sounded like despair. Moshi cursed under his breath, punching the shelf without warning. Gumong's little coin jar swayed and fell to the floor, where it loudly shattered. Moshi turned toward the sound, his uncomprehending gaze sweeping over the mess. After a moment, he realized something, and let go of Gumong. He straightened up and turned to look at the floor. Moonlight spilled through the window. As it turned out, in that little coin jar, there was nothing at all. Gumong hadn't received even one small white cowrie. The jar was empty. What? You didn't take any customers? No, but there was definitely someone beforehand. So he's never made money? At all? Through this whole thing? Never slept with anybody? But what? Who the heck was the person that was in the room? Huh? Also, that was the end of chapter 7 at page 84. Okay. Okay. Anyway, yeah, no picture yet. I don't know if I even want a picture of that scene, but like... Anyway, chapter 8. Gumong has it rough. That... I can tell. How could this be? How could it be empty? It was as if a ladle full of ice had been tossed into boiling water. The roiling waves momentarily ceased, but the thick mist remained. In this hazy fog, Moshi wondered vaguely. Clearly, clients have come in the... okay. Clearly, clients have come to this room. So why isn't there a single white cowrie in his jar? Chiejun was strict, stern, and self-restraint, like indomitable wailed. Oh my god. Like an indomitable walled city, nothing could make his fortress light the beacons of warning, except for Gumong. Ever since the old days, whenever Gumong was involved, Moshi was prone to losing control, becoming easily enraged, reckless, and impatient, even to the point of losing his composure and ability to think. Oh, really? I think we just seen you crash out for a second there. We definitely know. Later, when he became a commander, years of ruthless war had sharpened and refined him farther, but he still hadn't been able to control this selfish little impulse. In front of Gumong, Moshi wasn't the highest-ranked general of Chonghua. He was nothing more than an ordinary young man, one who was less and less able to control himself, and more desperate to know how Gumong had been these past 2 years. I wouldn't say I'm desperate to know, but I really would like to know too. But they disgraced him, and then not even paid him for it. And how did Gumong become so calm? So calm he was almost apathetic. In the face of such as a rise in favor and fall into disgrace, could anyone really be so calm? Waste of money! A furious shout came from outside, interrupting Moshi's thoughts. The sound of footsteps quickly followed, and a woman cursed as she stalked towards the room. He can't do anything right, and only fucking knows how to make clients upset. The traitor should have been hanged ages ago. I truly don't understand what compelled Wang Shujun to spare his shitty life. Moshi's brow furrowed. This was the manager of Danmei Pavilion, Madame Guqin. Wait. Shin? Madame Shin? A long time ago, as a gesture of friendship, Wang Shujun had asked Madame Shin to choose a dozen different beauties to send to Moshi's army, but no matter how Madame Shin tried to persuade Moshi, and no matter how extravagantly she described these beauties, he had refused to keep the people she sent. More than anything, Moshi had been made note of that sharp and shrill voice, which was so irritating and made his head hurt. Before I continue, I am looking up the pronunciation to that. My friend texted. Pronounce. Okay, Chin, Madam Chin. He can't cry or smile, can't flirt or fuck every time clients leave his room, they end up cursing me out. The woman raged, her shadow already dark on the window paper. What a total waste of money. How could Moshi be this unlucky? The news that Jiejon was visiting brothels would shake the nation to its core, and word that Jiejon had snuck through the back door to visit a brothel would further stupefy all the Chonghua. And if word got out that Jiejon was secretly visiting a brothel to bed his mortal enemy, that would blow the top off Chonghua's capital city. Moshi wrenched Gumong's face toward him, his rough breaths brushing Gumong's cheeks. "Where can I leave?" He asked, lowering his voice. Gumong coughed, gasping for air. The words outside will change color when a client's here. She won't come in. I'm not a client. Gumong's eyes widened. Then, during the brief span of their conversation, Madame Chin's flickering shadow had reached the doorway. Just as she was about to push open the door, Moshi glanced to the side. Don't tell her I'm here. The door opened. Simultaneously, Moshi let go of Gumong and darted behind the decorative screen. Madame Chin entered, a pipe in her hand. She exhaled through red lips, filling the room with the cloying scent of smoke. Gumong couldn't stop himself from sneezing quietly. You cough and choke every time I come into your room. I keep hoping you might die. Madame Chin rolled her eyes. But even though I've kept you for all these years, you are sure aren't dead yet. She sat down at the round table, taking a few more puffs from her water pipe. Water pipe? I don't know much about pipes, but... Oh. Great General Gu, there are only 3 more days in this month, she said maliciously. I won't bother comparing you to those who earn thousands of calories, but even the ugliest and most disagreeable of your brethren can sweet talk and welcome clients with a smile well enough to earn their keep. She glanced at him. What about you? I don't have any money. I know you don't. Madame Quinn chewed on her pipe. You can't do anything right. Your face is acceptable, but you have no other skills. Gumong sneezed softly again. Why bother pretending to be frail and pitiful? Madame Chin was growing angrier, and she raised her voice to berate him. Look at yourself. What do you have in that rotten drawers of yours? Keeping you around only loses me money all year long. Gumong said nothing. Wang Shujun may have forbidden me from laying a finger on you, but if this continues, I'll kill that dog and you keep in the courtyard. As soon as Gumong heard kill that dog, he spoke up. I did as you said. Bullshit. You think I'm stupid? And I'm gonna pause for a second. Wang Shujun is that I can't remember. Who's Wang Shujun? Looking through the names. Wang Shujun. Wang Shujun. Ain't telling me. Oh, he's a character that's not showing up in the thing, or am I just blind? Did I just look it up? Oh! Mom. Sorry, I found the pronunciation guide. Huh. Anyway, I don't remember who that is. I'll just have to look that up afterwards. They don't give me money. They tell me am a... Gumong paused before saying that word aloud. Traitor. Guoshi heard this from behind the screen. Although he couldn't see Gumong's expression, Gumong's voice was as unmoved as before. He seemed to be expressing something wholly insignificant, without a hint of guilt or shame. To him, the word traitor seemed light as a feather. Traitors shouldn't earn money, Gumong continued. They say what I do for them is my duty. Through the gap in the screen, Gumong's silhouette was solitary and helpless. It's what I owe them. Madame Chin sputtered. Yes, indeed, you're a traitor, she said angrily. But what does this have to do with me? Of course you owe them, but I'm running a brothel, not a charity. Why should I lose money on you? What's more, those noble clients curse me out every time. How many times have I told you to serve those lords? I can't ask for money. You're the one who have to entice them to pay. At least the others can coax some coin out of their clients, but you, Great General Gu, can you? Gumong was silent. After a while, Madame Chin's voice became even sharper, shrill enough to pierce the sky. What are you glaring at me for? How dare you? Get on your knees! Moshi assumed Gumong wouldn't kneel, or at least not immediately, but reality once more defied his expectations. Gumong didn't seem to care. It was as if he wasn't aggrieved in the slightest. He knelt down in front of the woman. Is she gonna hit him? Moshi braced his hands against the icy wall beside him, his ears ringing with rushing blood. Gumong, actually, he didn't have time to finish the thought before he heard the crack of a whip. Moshi was inarguably a god of war who'd braved great battles, but this sound shocked him to the point of trembling. His pupils contracted as cold sweat beaded on his back. Through the narrow gaps in the screen, Moshi saw Gumong kneel in front of Madame Chin. The madwoman stood up, coalesced spiritual energy into her palm, and thrashed Gumong savagely on the back with a scarlet whip. This woman seemed to pour all her pent-up resentment over her losses onto Gumong. She whipped him hard another 20 or 30 times before coming to a panting stop. Throughout the process, Gumong made not a single sound, not even a muted groan, as if he didn't care about the degradation or the pain. Probably because he's used to it. I mean, I wouldn't say used to it. I don't think someone can get used to that kind of thing. But I know you can kind of like numb yourself to certain things. Like the thing might be painful, but it's happened so many times that you feel almost like you're numb to it. I don't know, I've never experienced that, so this is what I've only heard, so I don't know. Through the process, once Madame Chin had her fill of beating him, she retracted the spiritual whip, she picked up her pipe again and took a few drags to soothe her heaving chest. You know that people find traitors even more disgusting than their enemies, right? So you better work harder to flatter them and make them obediently give you their money. Flatter. Gumong echoed, as if trying to understand this word. You don't earn anything next month. Not only will the clients beat you, I won't let you off so easily either. You better think about that. Madame Chin left in a furious huff. When Moshi emerged, Gumong's back was still toward him as he knelt on the floor. His silhouette seemed entirely serene. His collar was opened wide, pale skin visible over the hem. Above was his neck, bent like a curl of smoke. Below was scarlet, looking like burning embers. Too much about Gumong was unnatural. He seemed too much like a stranger, too quiet, too apathetic toward life or death, humiliation or praise. There were so many questions Moshi wanted to ask, but as he stared at the blood still dripping down Gumong's back, what came out of his mouth was, "Are all your wounds from her?" "Not all of them." Gumong stood up. "When you guys come, most of you beat me." Moshi was speechless. "She beats me more than anyone," Gumong answered without sparing Moshi a glance, absorbed in his own business as he walked to the water basin. God dang. Whew. He does seem completely different from the character that they explained to us in the beginning, doesn't he? Like, very different. Moshi was about to reply when he saw Gumong shrug off his robe. Gumong tossed the blood-stained garnet aside and picked up the basin to pour its contents all over himself with a thunderous splash. That back of his seemed to be enchanted. It trapped the invincible General Mo in a nightmare. Let me guess. The author's about to explain what it looks like. Seeing? Okay. One more chapter after this one. That back of his seemed to be enchanted. Oh wait, nope. Read that already. In Chiejun's memories, when Gumong was young, his back had been very pale, his skin like glistening jade fished out of a creek. Later on, when Gumong grew up, his back had become straight. Broad and fiercely muscled like a bowstring pulled taut. Finally, after they went to war, the harsh elements and scorching sun had been slowly burnished Gumong's skin the color of honey. When he bathed in the river at dusk, a shrug of his shoulders sent water droplets rolling down his back, like a great army chasing the shifting sand dunes of his shoulder blades. They streamed down in a wild, rugged line, with the path cut off abruptly at his narrow waist, sinking beneath the belt of his uniform pants. Back then, there had been sparingly few scars on Gumong's back. His scars were mostly on his front, for instance on his chest or abdomen. But now, in the dim yellow lamplight, the back that Chiejun knew so well was unrecognizable, covered in whip scars, knife wounds, and mangled magic burns. It was difficult to locate a single patch of unarmed flesh, not to mention the bloody cuts from the beatings moments ago. How much must that have hurt? But Gumong seemed not to care. He indifferently poured cold water all over himself to wash the blood away. Moshi's heart was in disarray. He hadn't wanted to say anything, but somehow he was unable to look away. He thought of Gumong in their academy days, standing with his back to Moshi, and sighing with exasperation. "Shidi, you work too hard. Can you still move your legs? Come here, get on my back. I'll take you home." He thought of Gumong on the battlefield, and fierce and unyielding, their backs pressed together. "Shidi, don't rush ahead. Stay by my side." Moshi closed his eyes in silence. In the end, he asked, "Where's your wound salve?" He definitely still cares for him. I mean, obviously. Obviously. But, like, if he starts to try to say that, no, I don't care about him, I hate him, and all that, you might hate him. Well, I wouldn't say he hates him either. Just, but, like, anyway. But you definitely still care. Otherwise, if he saw him getting hurt like this, he would have not asked that question or been, like, horrified to see this. Umong's eyes were somewhat unfocused, as if he didn't understand what Moshi was saying. Wood? Valve? What about bandages? Bandages? Moshi didn't know whether what he felt right then was anger or hatred, resentment or some other inexplicable pain. He should at least have a bottle of blood-clotting powder. Umong stopped moving and turned to look at him. After a few seconds of thought, he finally understood, but he shook his head. No need. It will heal. You know, my VTuber might be smiling. I'm not smiling. That's just sad. He continued to splash cold water over himself, then haphazardly dried himself with a towel. Finally, he stepped over to the low camphor wood wardrobe and took out a wrinkled robe and put it on. Just like that. Seeing how thoughtlessly he moved, Moshi's frustration roared even louder. He had seen many prisoners of war. There were those who were unyielding, those who were obedient, those who wanted to die, and those willing to change allegiances. But Gumong was unlike any prisoner he had ever seen. Moshi didn't know exactly what the current Gumong was like. He sensed not the slightest shred of familiarity, nor the slightest sliver of human emotion. Gumong didn't shed tears, feel shame, show terror, or cast blame. He didn't even seem to feel pain. Does he not have a soul? Isn't that... It's kind of reminding me of the Vampire Diaries when your humanity gets taken away. Although, or like Supernatural when Sam's soul wasn't in him. Is it kind of like that? Do they have that sort of thing in this kind of series? I mean, they didn't in her Urha, so I don't know. Anyway. After a long pause, Moshi asked, Gumong, what exactly are you thinking? He didn't expect Gumong to answer. He only spoke because his chest felt impossibly tight. But to his surprise, Gumong didn't reply, and his reply was very honest. I want cowrie shells. Moshi had no words. Other people here have them, but I don't. No one's ever given me any. Moshi gazed at him, watching Gumong's expression as he spoke. That sense of strangeness intensified. Everyone says I shouldn't want them. As Gumong talked, he looked toward the fragmented remains of his jar before bending to pick up the shards and put them on the table. He looked as placid as ever, but Moshi gradually realized his expression seemed somewhat bewildered, as if there was something Gumong didn't understand. Gumong turned to look at him. You're the first person to give me a cowrie shell. Moshi was momentarily silent. You know very well why I gave it to you, he replied stiffly. Gumong didn't immediately respond, instead continuing to assess Moshi. This was the first time, since Moshi's entrance, that Gumong had looked at him carefully, without the disinterested blankness he used to appease clients. Then Gumong reached a hand toward him. You still want it? Moshi stared down at him. Didn't you want to give it back to me earlier? I want it. Moshi felt a surge of frustration. In order to stop wasting breath on Gumong, in order to avoid getting even angrier, he took out another golden cowrie and passed it to him. Is it just me, or... Gumong doesn't feel like he knows Moshi. That, like, I don't know, it's just giving me that kind of feeling. I don't know. Gumong didn't say thank you. He took the shell, holding it in both hands, and lowered his head to inspect it. Then, he turned to look at the shattered jar on the table. After some thought, he walked to the bed and dug out under the soft mattress until he found a brocade pouch. Gumong was about to open the pouch and put the cowrie shell inside when Moshi realized something. He stood up, his heart going cold. Wait, before I flip the page, was he lying when he said he wasn't getting money? He was hiding it? Well, okay. Hold it. Gumong froze. What's that in your hand? Moshi's voice was low and dangerous, each word dripping with threat, as if they would be splintered between his teeth with the slightest exertion of force. Take it out. And that's the end of chapter 8. Page 94. And you want to guess what the next chapter's called that's making me really feel like what I just said a second ago is probably true? It is called Caught Red-Handed. Chapter 9 is called Caught Red-Handed. Lovely. Which this is also the last chapter of the day. So, ooh. It was an extremely well-crafted little pouch, embroidered with a landscape of mountains and rivers, as well as the sun and the moon. A rosy dawn was stitched in golden thread, the winding rivers and mountains in silver, and a red agate pendant hung from the bottom. It was clear at a glance that this item was expensive. Moshi stared at the brocade pouch for a long time, rage boiling in his heart. Slowly, he spat out a few words. Who gave this to you? Gumong seemed to have noticed the rancor in his eyes and didn't reply right away. He tucked the pouch back into his robes against his heart. Mine, he said, without answering the question. That was absurd. Gumong had fallen to such depths. His jar was completely empty. How could he afford that kind of brocade pouch? Moshi was about to laugh from anger. With what money? I exchanged it. A pause. With whom? I exchanged it, he repeated, and that was all. Moshi lost his temper. What did you exchange it for? What do you have? He stopped. Gumong lived in a brothel. What kind of people did he meet? What could he give in exchange for this pouch? The answer was self-evident, but Moshi was still interrogating him like a fool. And then there's art! Jeez. Gumong really does look expressionless. No emotion whatsoever. His eyes seem very vacant too. Oh, and he has a little tooth sticking out. A canine tooth, I'm guessing that Moshi keeps talking about. His heart felt as if it had been scraped with sandpaper, painful and itchy. Moshi closed his eyes, wanting to soften his voice, but his pale, elegant face couldn't hide the way he clenched his jaw. In the end, as if in defeat, he opened his eyes again, his voice dangerously hoarse. Why would you want something like that? Gumong didn't seem to know what this pouch could be used for either, but he clutched it tight and stared at Moshi, not making a sound. Because it's pretty? Moshi asked. Because you like it? Didn't you do something so ridiculous for a reason? Likely because he couldn't handle Shiejun's interrogation, when Gumong finally began to speak, he was slowly. Someone gave it to me. Didn't you say you exchanged it for something? Even now, you'd still lie to me? Someone. Gumong looked as if he was trying to keep. Someone. Gumong looked as if he was trying to keep talking. Something stopped him. He bit his lower lip, and at the end, he again chose silence. This silence seemed to be the straw that broke Moshi's sanity. He gazed, was like a sharp knife, wrenching open a seashell, suddenly severe. Continue. Moshi stared at Gumong's face. Perhaps due to his extreme anger, or perhaps because the light in his room was too dim, Moshi again failed to notice there was something different about Gumong's eyes. Why did you stop? Is there anything on earth you can't say out loud? Moshi swallowed thickly, each word grinding out between clenched teeth. Speak. It won't be anything new, no matter how absurd you. Someone was good to me. Gumong cut in, unmoving. It was like a sudden blow. This time, it was Moshi's turn to be speechless. His throat felt terribly dry. Someone had been good to Gumong. Preposterous. Who would treat a traitor with kindness? Then Moshi remembered. Right whenever Gumong had needed him, he always used smooth talk, teasing, and flirting. Now that Gumong had fallen on hard times at Danmei Pavilion, it wasn't strange to see him employ silver-tongued lies to entice another person into helping him in his time of need. But Moshi was so angry his vision flashed dark. For a long time, his mind was stuck on the word but, unable to continue. I feel like what Moshi is making up in his head of what he thinks happened did not happen. And also, Moshi letting his anger control himself so much now, he's not really noticing things he really needs to notice. Like how flippin' vacant Gumong's eyes look and how emotionless they look. I mean, he's noticed that he already seems emotionless, but like, look clearly at him. He's completely different. Very well. Very well. Moshi stopped, his eyes red with overpowering fury. Only after a long while did he continue, nearly choking on his words. Gumong, you truly impress me. Gumong didn't make a sound as he leaned against the wall, gazing at Moshi's face. Moshi lifted his head. It was as if he was trying to will any wetness from his eyes. He stood there, looking up for a while, before he suddenly brought a hand to his face and burst out laughing. I really don't know what I was clinging to all these years. I have no idea why I came to see you tonight. The more Moshi thought about it, the more anger and sorrow filled him. By the end, his voice was shaking. He slammed his fist into the wall beside Gumong, scraping his knuckles and leaving gruesome bloodstains behind. As the lamplight flickered between them, Moshi pressed Gumong against the wall, his face full of hatred, like he was ready to tear the man apart. Moshi clenched his jaw. General Gu, you truly live a blessed life. Even after rotting so far, you still have someone who treats you kindly. Gumong! Madam Chin's shout came like a clap of thunder, echoing from far away. Zhao Gongxi is here. Hurry up! Change into clean clothes and make the young master nice and comfortable. Sorry, Zhao Gongzai. Her voice pulled Moshi back to the present. He came to his senses almost immediately. Although his chest was still heaving, the uncontrollable rage in his eyes was now restrained. Moshi lowered his head slightly, his ragged breaths rising and falling in Gumong's ear. He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, that vicious beast stirring inside his cage had disappeared. Those eyes remained but slightly damp in the darkness. They shone like morning stars. Zhao Gongzai, did he give you that pouch? Gumong didn't seem to understand Moshi's hatred. He continued to gaze at Moshi's face, as tranquil as ever, and shook his head. Zhao Gongzai. As Moshi repeated his name in his heart, he realized this was probably the youngest son of Zhao clan. Moshi had heard of this young master. Among the nobles of the capital, he was regarded as the most brutish piece of trash. What he lacked in competence, he made up for with an unending stream of malicious ideas. Well, that doesn't sound good for Gumong. Moshi looked toward Gumong. Gumong's expression hadn't changed, but he was unconsciously rubbing a scar on his arm. Did Zhao Gongzai, stab him or something? After a few seconds, Moshi laughed again, as if tormenting himself. What's wrong? The person who was good to you doesn't care? Without a word, Gumong tucked the pouch away. Moshi didn't move. Is Zhao Gongzai a frequent guest too? He asked. Gumong nodded. Moshi stared at him. His handsome features seemed to contain some unfathomable emotion. A moment later, he laughed once more. Before, I thought you had changed. Now I see that you're still the same as ever. You know how to make anyone happy. The darkness in his eyes deepened, as though weighed down by the past. Take care. Rising from the round table, Moshi donned his cloak and strode toward the door. You are leaving? Moshi turned away. I'm leaving, he said, frigid. I won't stand in the way of your livelihood. But Moshi stopped. What? I took your cowrie shell. Moshi paused. Think of it as returning your past affections. Gumong knelt his brows in confusion. Past affections? Moshi felt that Gumong was acting very strangely, but he was running out of time. As soon as Zhao Gongzai got upstairs, he wouldn't be able to leave even if he wanted to. Moshi glanced at Gumong one last time and turned to push open the door. But at that moment, I'm saying sorry a lot, Jesus. I kind of like read ahead and saw him talking about money, so when I was trying to say at that moment, I accidentally said money. But at that moment, Gumong whispered, You're rich. You have money. I want to know who you are. I said it. I did say that I thought he didn't remember him, and it seems like it. Yep. Although I'm wondering why he didn't say anything when like Moshi was going on a rant about like all that stuff from their past, or how he's feeling about him, all this stuff. Moshi's hand froze inches from the door. He stood stock still for a long interval before whipping around. What? You're rich. Second part. You have money. After that. Gumong was confused by this reaction. He sounded hesitant as he repeated himself. I want to know who you are. A crash sounded in Moshi's ear, like a massive stone falling from a cliff before his eye. He stopped breathing and stared fiercely into Gumong's face, his black-brown pupils shrinking as light flared in the depths of his eyes. Gumong. His heart had frozen over, but he ground out his words menacingly. Are you fucking toying with me? Gumong was confused. You're the client. You paid. So aren't you supposed to toy with me? Moshi's features were twisted almost beyond recognition. All the strange moments during their conversation flashed through his head like great waves battering his heart, stunning him so thoroughly that for a long time he couldn't react. But right then, the door opened behind. But right then, the door behind them creaked open. A man's lazy voice came from behind it. Gumong, your Zhao Ge is here to patronize your visit. Your business. Why haven't you scrambled over to kneel and welcome? Moshi whipped around, but it was too late. The little Zhao bastard had swaggered in as he spoke. He looked around the room with bleary eyes, blinking in the low light. Poor General Mo. He was such a proper person, and now, for the second time in as many hours, he was faced with the same annoying crisis. The last round had gone all right, but this time he had nowhere to go, nowhere to hide, and was seconds away from being caught red-handed by his own junior. Moshi's head had just been upended by Gumong. You're rich. You have money. I want to know who you are. But he couldn't think deeply on it right now. So instead, he cursed inwardly and pushed Gumong against the wall. He pinned him there, with his tall frame pressing one hand against the wall, so neatly obscure both their face. Gumong's eyes widened within his arms. You... Hush. Moshi lowered his head and lifted Gumong's chin. His fingers were rough and forceful as he turned Gumong's head and bent down to bring them closer. Cool, thin lips drew near soft ones. their scalding breaths overlapping. Moshi didn't want to touch his traitor again, so of course he wouldn't actually kiss Gumong's mouth. Oh, of course. I thought he actually was gonna, but of course he's not gonna. I mean, like, makes sense. Why not? But like, too early for that. In his effort to create a convincing scene, however, he was still pressed very close. So close they were almost nose to nose, their lips almost brushing. The narrow space between them became a wisp of willow catkin, its fluttering drift making Moshi's skin tingle. When Moshi had hidden from the Madam Chin, he thought his luck couldn't get any worse. There was no way anything more vexing could occur. How naive had he been? Moshi caged Gumong inside his arms. Don't make a sound, he rasped. Gumong, trapped beneath him, didn't think much of the situation. All he thought was that Moshi was too strong. He bore down on Gumong like a mountain and made it hard to breathe. He didn't want to be crushed farther, so he instinctively nodded. Wait, is this the first time we're actually getting what Gumong kind of like feels and thinks? Because if so, finally. Because I actually want to know what he's thinking. Lean closer. Gumong did as he was told. Thus, from the doorway, the two looked as if they were kissing with overwhelming passion and desire, as if in the next moment they would roll into bed and utterly inseparable. This suggestive sight would make most normal people exclaim with shock and instantly turn to leave. Perverts aren't like normal people. I'm gonna guess that the guy that came in the room is one of them. Zhao Gong's eye was taken aback at first. He backed up a few steps and checked the plaque hanging on Gumong's door. Rubbing his eyes, he muttered, "The words are black. There shouldn't be a client in here." But after the initial shock, this Zhao Gong's eye became even more invested. He walked back into the room, smiling. This is so embarrassing. It seems like the spell on the plaque doesn't work anymore. I had no idea someone else was in the room. No response. Hey there, you're so skilled. Our great General Gu is the thorniest problem in all of Laomei Pavilion, but you've got him all pliant in your arms, letting you kiss him however you like. Why don't you teach me some of that impressive technique and let me have some fun as well? He chuckled mischievously. The more the merrier, right? Let's share. I know. And that's the end of chapter 9 on page 103. Actually made it 100 pages in. Finally. Jesus. Well, I don't know how they're gonna get out of that situation. And I really want to know what Moshi's thoughts on when he finally gets the time to actually like process the thoughts that Gumong does not remember anything. This will be interesting for sure. Anyway, that's where we're stopping today. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. And yeah. Well, okay. So far, I do like the story. And I think I said this last time, but I really do. I'm like, some things catch me off guard. And like, what? Also, I am so sorry, and I know I already apologized several times, and I need to like quit doing that, about me messing up so many times with I don't know, my brain does this thing when I'm like already reading. It like tries to switch up the words. And I don't know why. It's stupid. I that's all I got. It's stupid. My brain's sometimes slow and weird. But anyway, like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. And I hope you guys will enjoy the rest of your day. And if you're interested in, like, getting the physical copy of the book and, you know, owning it and reading it yourselves, I will have that link in the description. And everything you see on the screen, like my background, my VTuber, or, you know, like the like intro and all that, I will have also in the description. I don't know why I struggled on that word, but yeah. And I will see you guys next time. Have a wonderful day.